And with me today, I have the fantastic Rachel Babaganov, who is a globally recognized Wim Hof Method instructor, women's empowerment facilitator, and advocate for holistic wellness. Drawing from her diverse background as a public health nurse and researcher, Rachel blends science and intuitive practice like breathwork, cold exposure, and mindset training to help individuals unlock their resilience and reclaim their power. Her personal journey from challenging cultural expectations to finding liberation through transformative tools infuses her coaching and retreats with authenticity and compassion. As a podcast host, coach, and global traveler, Rachel is on a mission to guide others towards self-discovery, health, and happiness. Welcome to the show, Rachel. Such honor
Wow.
to have you here.
What a beautiful intro. Thank you so much for your words. Thank you. Thank you for
Oh,
having me here also. I'm very happy.
amazing. Yeah, but and so for all my listeners out there, myself and Rachel connected on Instagram. And because,
Mhm.
we both kind of fell in love with each other's mission and what we're out to bring to the world. But it'd be great, Rachel, for you to share how your upbringing and cultural expectations shaped your early identity and the challenges that you faced in breaking free from them.
Wow. We just dive right in. What a question. Oh, thank you. Yeah, hmm. I was raised in a really interesting culture because my parents and my family, they come from Uzbekistan, but I was born and raised in Canada. And so there was this beautiful dynamic of being born in Canada and having this traditional upbringing at home. And yeah, I found myself as a woman growing up in this culture. There was like a lot of expectations and when I look back now, I'm very, very grateful for my family and I'm grateful for how I was raised, but I also see that as a younger girl, I'm pretty wild as a child anyways. I was pretty talkative and loud and I had a really I was already like quite stubborn and had my own ideas very young. And I think in my culture there was expectations as a woman that you're quiet and you're nice and you marry into the culture and there's expectations that you're young as a mother and things like this. And yeah, I kind of wasn't that way. I had my own set of ideas of how I wanted to live my life. And I think until it wasn't an issue until I was really more of like a teenager and a young adult that we kind of started clashing a little bit more because I had ways that I wanted to live that was very tough for the culture that I was raised in. And yeah, I think that this now I see how great it was actually because I think now as a woman and as a free woman living my own life, I see more and more that I really want to help other women liberate from patterns that we were given. And I think it doesn't really matter how you're raised, even in your family dynamic, but just culturally speaking, we live in a culture where women have a lot of expectations put on them, like that we should be quiet and we should be nice and do the right thing and things like that. And I'm a real strong believer that actually every person is free and wild in their own right. And so I really love being able to see, especially women, um, break free from these ideas of who they should be, but actually really be who they are. And so yeah, I think my upbringing really was a big part of that. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, and what I sense from that is just the release of the inner child because I
Mm,
just feel like, when we've undergone such challenges growing up, that we lose that inner child because
absolutely.
yeah, we just become so like in, freeze, fight, or flight mode.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I'm really grateful that you bring that up because it's a big topic that comes up over and over again in the retreats is working with this inner child. And you see like usually after the breath work we go into a visualization of the inner child and it really touches people that so many people have lost touch to this child, this like free, wild, playful child. And we're so much in the doing and responsibilities, which of course we need to do. But on top of that, and inside of each one of us, there's just a playful child that wants to be seen and, you know, hugged and loved.
So true. Yeah. And don't you find as well, sometimes it's quite hard to meet those people in our everyday living. And I guess which is why you've created what you have to bring everyone together so that they can all become children again.
Basically, just play a little bit. Yeah. And
Oh,
it's so beautiful to see it because you know it's when you come together in a group and like this playfulness comes out. It's not only that you play, but you're also like witnessed in that by other people and held in that. And I think that can also be really nourishing and healing for a lot of people who didn't have that when they were younger.
so true, so true. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to finding out more about your treats. But what led you to actually embrace the Wim Hof method in particular? And how did that actually transform your personal healing journey?
Yeah. Well, my background is actually as a nurse. So I worked as a public health nurse in Canada. And I was always very interested in mental health and probably a lot because of my own personal journey. And I left Canada quite young, actually, because after working a few years as a nurse, I decided I wanted to travel. So I spent a lot of time in India and Southeast Asia, Japan. I was teaching, and this calling for helping people came back, and I thought, okay, maybe I pursue graduate education. So I did my master's in Germany, in Hamburg, in a big, beautiful city. And I did my research actually on mental health. And at the end of my research, at the end of writing my thesis, I very like sometimes I really have to laugh at the magic of life because sometimes it's just so crazy the coincidences that happen. But I was invited to someone's house and I went there without knowing who was there. And it was a beautiful community house in Germany. And there was a guy who we spoke a little bit and he asked about my research and I told him about it. And he said, "Hey, have you heard of the Wim Hof method?" And at the time, I never heard of it. I practiced some breath work. And I mean, I've done cold exposure just being a Canadian and being outside. It's just so cold there. And he said, "Hey, I have like a freezer, a chest freezer in my basement. Would you like to try it?" And I thought like, yeah, that sounds really interesting. So actually, this man, Michael, is now my husband, and he invited me to the basement of his house, and there was truly a human-sized freezer.
My God.
And I had my first ever cold exposure in this freezer, and it was, you know, first of all, when my mom heard this story, she was like, "What? You'd
Yeah.
never do something like that." But I'm actually really happy that I did because I went into this freezer and it was such a beautiful experience. When I came out, it was really like a quiet stillness that you very rarely have in life. It takes, for me, the only other time I've had something like that was after a 10-day Vipassana, which is like a 10-day silent retreat meditation. And in 2 minutes of being in the cold, I came out and I had like pure stillness, pure quiet, really deeply grounded in myself. And so I was very curious and I went to many more workshops and I started exploring the method. And then I myself became a Wim Hof Method instructor because not only the cold really touched me, but when I started exploring the breath work, it opened up a whole new door of healing for me. And I think I realized for me, research is one thing, and I'm happy that there are researchers out there, but to be able to really work with people on a cellular level, working with the breath, working with the cold, it just clicked. It clicked for me, and I've seen it also help many other people.
Amazing. Yeah. So, how does breath work and cold exposure contribute to trauma recovery and resilience in particular?
That's a really beautiful question. You know, the Wim Hof method actually it's not meant for trauma. It's not the focus. It's actually really a lot about reducing inflammation and keeping the body really healthy. And I've seen it in many people. But in my own experience, I've seen that it's helped me personally with trauma because first of all, the breath work, it's so regulating for the nervous system. When you practice the Wim Hof breath work, if you're in a state of freeze or whatever, if you're in a high level of stress, and you put your body in a small dose of stress, which is the breath work, for a small period of time, it really helps bring the nervous system from the sympathetic, we got to go fight or flight into this parasympathetic rest or digest. And for me, that was super helpful because I was really in this fight or flight state, and the breath work really was able to bring me down and regulate me. And also, I've noticed with the breath work time and time again that it really helps you release blocked emotions because I think there's been studies that show also when you do breath work, you go away from this prefrontal cortex thinking all the time, and you go more into the deeper levels of the brain where you can really release emotions. And yeah,
Mm.
that's been for me personally on my journey very helpful. And I've seen it also help a lot of other people. And in terms of the cold, oh, well, for me, the cold is like a playing field because it's really stimulating stress. So it's like a playground for how we deal with stress. And in the beginning, I was really like, okay, this is like, it's really uncomfortable. But the more I did it, the more I realized that when I can go in these situations of going into the cold, it really helped me learn how I can regulate in stress. And
Mm.
I think in general, people have a lot of stress in their lives, but I think also for people who've dealt with trauma or really stressful situations, being able to deal with this stress in the body, because when you have trauma, oftentimes you feel overwhelmed. You cannot really, sometimes we're like stuck in something. And when we can learn how to navigate that, and the cold really helps us do that, I find it to be such a powerful tool. And of course, also when you go in the cold, you release a cocktail of endorphins. So a lot of dopamine, a lot of noradrenaline. And for me personally, every time I go in there, it's just like I feel so alive. I feel so present. And I know for me, one of my coping strategies was dissociating, leaving my body. And when I go in the cold, you're you're just dropped back into your body. And I've heard from many people actually who've experienced traumatic situations in their lives that going into the cold really brings them back to themselves. It really drops them back into their body. So I think it can be a very powerful tool when used, of course, in the right way, not forcing, but yeah, slowly and allowing the body also to adapt.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And you've also spoken about softening into cold
Hmm.
immersion as a ritual of surrender. So, how does that approach actually align with healing?
Beautiful question, Anu. Yeah, when I first started practicing the Wim Hof method, I think I really just wanted to do it right. This is something that's really like a big pattern of mine, like to do everything right. And so I went into the cold a lot, probably too much. And I think also the Wim Hof method, if you know Wim, he's an amazing guy. He's done amazing things, but
Mm.
he also has a very masculine, powerful energy that's kind of like, just do it, just go
Yeah.
for it. And so when I started the Wim Hof method, I thought like, okay, just go into the cold, like push yourself. And yeah, I very quickly learned that that wasn't the right way for me because actually with the cold, it's quite merciless. And if you do it too much, your body speaks to you immediately. And my body was tired and I felt like, oh, this is actually like making me really exhausted. And so I started noticing that if I practiced a little bit less and with a little more sensitivity, that actually I was gaining so much more. And I think I've seen it also many times when people go into the cold, you see some people they're fighting. They're like in the cold and they're like, I have to do this, and they're fighting, which is really how we learn to deal with stress
Yeah.
is okay, can I do this not by fighting, but really by softening? It's kind of like, I mean, I myself haven't given birth, but I've heard it from many women that if you go into the cold, if you can really surrender to it, like I allow this, I relax into it, that it's very, very different than fighting into it. And it's also why I started working with women because I also really think it's so important that we use these methods for us. And I also noticed that yeah, there's also something to listening, for example, to our cycle. You know, when I'm bleeding personally, or the days before my period, I'm really sensitive. And actually, you know, our temperature is colder right before our period. It actually drops by almost 1 degree.
Yeah.
And I never knew this before when I was practicing the method. But then
Mm,
I started realizing, okay, I'm just more sensitive. I'm colder.
mm,
How can I soften in this practice and not force but listen? And so for me, before my period, I just don't do the cold. I just don't do it because it doesn't feel good for me. But on the days after my period, or especially when I'm ovulating, I'm like, let's go. Like, I really want it. The body actually asks for it. So, yeah, just fine tuning these practices to actually really, yeah, suit us, you know, that we use them to benefit us and not that we just do them mindlessly.
Wow, love that. Thank you so much. And because I know that, a lot of your work is on women's empowerment. So what unique challenges do women actually face when it comes to reclaiming their power and authenticity?
Hmm. These questions, I love it. Um, the question was what challenges, or can you repeat it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, what challenges do women face when it
Yeah.
comes to actually reclaiming their power and,
Yeah.
authenticity?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I cannot speak for everybody, but I can say from my experience and what I've noticed in these women retreats is I've noticed that a lot of us have really quieted ourselves
Mm,
and also lost this flame, this power, and um, lost their voice a little bit. It actually happened a few weeks ago. I did a retreat, and the topic was around the voice, really like speaking our voice, speaking our truth, excuse me. And um, it was something that a lot of the women were working with. And it
yeah.
really touched me because, of course, in the breathwork session, we released a lot. And then in the first cold exposure, we went inside and one of the women started howling, like really howling. And the rest of the women then started howling as well. And in that moment, I was so touched because I saw like, you know, this ability, the cold really brings out like a primitive part of us.
Wow.
And afterwards, all the women were just beaming and we were singing and we were playing and, you know, we were cold, but we were like playing. And
Amazing.
afterwards they also shared how liberating that was to just be able to use their voice in that way and to feel their bodies so alive. So
Mm,
yeah, I think especially for women to really fully take up space and fully use our voice is a challenge, but I see how the cold can really allow that.
wow. I love that.
Yeah.
God, yeah, because that was something that I suffered from. It was my chakras were all blocked, including, the throat chakra. So yeah, it was just from healing and, Reiki really helped me because at the
Mm.
time, I never really knew about the cold therapy treatments.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, so it's just anything that we can do to try and unblock, those chakras, which does result in suppression. It results in us
Absolutely.
not being able to speak out, the
Absolutely.
truth. And yeah, I just think that's phenomenal that, women come there and they howl and wow, they're able to express themselves.
And also feeling safe enough to do so, right? Like it's one thing to have the blockage, but to really feel safe enough to go there and to release it. It's so sacred. And I think it's also why coming together as women makes it like another level of safe for many people.
It does, especially because none of them know each other either, So, and I guess that, to build that trust, a lot of it does depend on energy as well,
Mm.
because energy doesn't lie. And I know
Mm.
that, to be in such a space with a load of strangers, it can feel quite daunting, but I'm feeling that, in your retreats, it's because of you, you create that beautiful energy and a safe space for everybody to
I mean, I
express.
think it's also every person who shows up and the
Mm,
willingness. And, you know, you spoke about authenticity before. And I also think when you see people cracking open in breathwork sessions, it also really gives you the trust of the space.
mm,
And I've seen it many times that one person feels safe enough to release in the breathwork session, and it's like a domino effect. The other person goes, and the other person goes, and it, they're really creating this space. Of course, it's like a synergy, yeah, but it requires each person to also show themselves vulnerably.
vulnerable, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So how does the Wim Hof method integrate science and intuition?
Hmm. Beautiful question. I mean, the Wim Hof method, there is so many studies to back it. And I think it was also very important for Wim himself and the community because I think for a long time, breath work was, it was people didn't really take it so seriously. It was like this woo-woo thing, breath work and meditation
Mindfulness.
and mindfulness. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what's so cool about the Wim Hof method is there is science to truly back up what's happening in the body. And, I'm not going to go into it, but you can go online and look for many, many studies where Wim used the breath work to fight off an endotoxin in his body, using the breath, he was able to actually fight off this bacteria that was in his body. And not only did he do it, but he trained other people to do it. So when you see this, you can really understand the power of the method. And I think what's so beautiful about that is then it allows you to actually go into the feeling. And I think that's what I appreciate so much about the method because I myself am, I come from a research background, but I'm actually a very intuitive person. And I love it so much because if I give the people the food in their mind, if you can understand the science, I see that then they trust, of course, because it's true. And then the feeling can happen because then you can really go into it with more trust, with more, yeah, of an open heart and an open mind.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. So just kind of thinking back at, the cultural and familial tensions that you actually experience. So what advice based on that would you now give to others struggling with a lot of, familial or societal expectations?
Wow. That's a really tough question. But I think for me, I never lost touch to my intuition. And I think that that's very challenging when you're in a situation where you're under a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
whether there's violence or, expectations put on you. I think it's very easy for the fire inside of you to get dim. And for me, it was like there was this voice that I had, and although at moments it got very dim, I always knew she was there. And I think, these practices like breath work that are so simple and you can do them anywhere, in your bed, you can just take a breath, you know, anywhere. And I think being able to develop your own personal connection is the most important thing. Just doing the breath work or looking for outside support if you can, a therapist, anything that you can to really help you come back to yourself. I think this is, yeah, something that can be really helpful. And if I could have told my little girl, my little Rachel, at the time, like, you've got this, like, you can do this, trust in yourself, it would have been so helpful also to hear that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it would. And just like thinking like at all the work that you're doing now, you're just offering so much. And I know that a lot of your work is based out in nature. So
Mm.
because you emphasize a lot about connecting with nature through your retreats.
Yeah.
So what role does that actually play in healing?
Huge role. A
Mm.
huge role, Anu. And I love the question. When I was in Canada, the thing that helped me the most was going to the mountains. And I'll never forget when I was stressed and struggling, um, I would go to the mountains and I just felt so held and so nourished by the stillness, by the earth. And I feel it time and time again. You bring people together who have stressful lives, children, work, so many responsibilities. And in a weekend of just being outside,
Um,
the whole nervous system comes down. It's so simple. I mean, we know it, science shows it. A little bit of being outside in nature, fresh air, sunlight, movement, hearing, the water, being in the water. That's really another level when you're in this cold water. you just feel the connection back to yourself, the connection to something bigger. Yeah, and I think it can profoundly shift your state.
So yeah, your advice is to get out in nature.
Get out in nature, go for a walk, hike a mountain, even just sit on your porch and let the sun hit your face.
Yeah, because I know you also integrate like water and breath and movement to create transformative experiences. How do you integrate all of these?
Well, how do I integrate them? I mean, I think it's all the same. It's just different tools which help connect us back to us.
Yeah.
And, when you're in a weekend together, there's so much time to go out in nature, to move the body, to be in cold rivers. And at the end of the day, these are all just tools that bring us back to ourselves. And I think for me, the reason why I integrate so many different tools is so that people can actually take one thing away that works for them. Because maybe the cold doesn't work for you. Maybe
Yeah.
movement isn't your thing, but maybe the breath work really hits you. Just that there's a tool that you can take away that can help you in life to cope with what's going on because life is stressful. We have ups and downs and it's not something you can escape, but I think with the right resources, the right tools, the right support, we can go through it in a better way. We can deal with it in a better way. We can build our capacity to hold.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah, very true. Absolutely. So what's been the most rewarding aspect of your work so far with the individuals and communities that you work with?
Wow, there's so many beautiful things that I can think about. I think the most rewarding thing is the connections. I
Mm,
think, it's one thing to see people breaking open and releasing. That's amazing. But the connections that are formed when you see people coming together and healing, and the fact that these relationships continue on, I cannot tell you how many people that I personally now have in my life from these retreats that are friends or even like family. I think that's something that, at the end of the day, it's really the relationships and the connections that matter the most. And I'm really grateful that I've went this way because I feel, yeah, the people that I meet, they really, really touch me.
and
And also and seeing them also connecting, like it's also a big part of what I do is not only creating spaces for the individual, but like to really bring people together. Because I think also in our world, so many people feel isolated and creating spaces where you can connect and make friendships and
yeah,
spaces where okay, I can call this person and they can hold space for me. Like that's really, really, really touches me.
that is touching. It's true, yeah, because the greatest reason for depression is isolation. So yeah, the more we can connect with each other and the more abundant, we're going to feel in life.
Absolutely.
So what vision do you have for the future of trauma healing and empowerment?
Wow. Yeah. I think it's a really beautiful question. I think for me, it's just that more people have access to the resources that can support them
Okay.
and that people have the courage and strength to be able to reach out for help. I think for me, I know that there are so many tools out there and there are so many people that are doing amazing work. And I just want to see it reach more people, that it becomes more normal that we ask for help, that it becomes more normal that we book a therapy appointment or we can ask a friend for space holding. And to be honest, my real vision is that every person has the skill to be able to hold space and when someone's struggling, that you can just go to any person on the street and say, "Hey, I'm struggling. Can you hold space for me right now?"
Yeah.
That we live in a world where that is possible, that we don't have to do it alone, but each person can really be there for one another in a really deep way and hold space for each other.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Yes. It's true. And I think with that comes a lot of understanding as well, understanding of the issues that a lot of us struggle with and not to brush the issues under the carpet because
Yeah,
I know culturally in the UK that's very common. People
yeah,
they just don't even want to deal with stuff. And so
yeah.
it's easier to just block it out.
Yeah, I think that's really an important thing that you're saying. And I think it's not only that they don't want to deal with it, but I think it's very difficult to look at that, and I think for many people, it just, you don't know where to begin because starting to look inwards, it opens up a lot, right? And it can be really a lot to hold. And I think it really starts with like creating spaces where you can start to look at that and also in yourself that you have the capacity to look at that.
Very true. Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. So tell us about the work that you do and all of your offerings and retreats coming up.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm actually really looking forward because I don't know if your listeners know, but you're going to join us in January here in the Algoy. So I currently am focusing actually a lot on these women retreats.
Mm,
So I have basically one retreat happening every month. The one in January is now full, but there's one in February and March. Yeah, so bringing women together in nature. We have a beautiful retreat space surrounded by the mountains, by cold water. So, yeah, just creating these retreat spaces where people can come together. We breathe, we go into the cold, we connect, we go deep together. So that's one of my offerings that is really near and dear to my heart. And I'm really happy that you can be there and experience it yourself. And other than that, I do workshops. So I do day workshops if people just want a little taste of what the method is. I'm also here in the Algoy. And I also do coaching online. So if anybody wants to know more about the Wim Hof method or do deeper coaching, I also provide that online.
yeah, and you do your breath work Wednesday evening sessions as well.
That's right. Yeah, there's a free space every Wednesday for women who want to breathe together, and it's a beautiful community. Yeah, there's many people who keep coming over and over, so it's beautiful to also see that growing.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And I just think it's amazing what you're doing. And I can just see the passion and, just how much it brings you joy, what you're doing. And it's definitely your chosen path. I feel like this was your life purpose.
Thanks for saying that. Thanks for saying it took a while to figure it out, and I have to say it was not always very clean the path. But
Mm, true.
I think that's also for all of us. We have our own journey, and the mess along the way just helps us get to where we need to get to.
It does
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that's it. Without all the challenges and setbacks, then I just feel like we wouldn't really, be like fulfilled either because with sadness comes happiness, there's always like a balance, isn't there? So
yeah,
yeah,
100%.
yeah, no, I just think it's amazing. So carry on doing what you're doing, and I can't wait to see you in person in
Yeah,
January.
me too. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Me too.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm just curious, if you have experience with breathwork and with the cold, and also how that, if you do, how that's also impacted you on your journey.
Yeah, so breath work, wow, that was just a phenomenal experience for me. I struggled at first to even try and breathe properly because I was always breathing from my chest, and so just to actually breathe through my tummy, it was like, whoa, this
Yeah.
is a different experience.
Yeah.
And that was it. Then once I learned, I took a lot of classes in it, and yeah, it absolutely transformed my life because with that, with real breathing came my feeling of presence, and I could actually then switch off from the monkey mind and just living in the past and the future, and I can just actually be here now. It is amazing, like just the power of breathing. I just found it phenomenal. Yeah. So yeah, but in terms, I haven't done any cold water therapy. I've had cold showers,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that's really hard, obviously. Yeah,
Hmm.
but we have to start somewhere. And even with that, you're right. I just found it so liberating, and I just found the shock, that cold water gives you. Again, you've got nowhere else to be but the present. So it does. It brings you back to. Oh, okay. So today is Thursday and because otherwise what happens, every time that we jump in the shower, we're always thinking about, anything that might have happened in the past or
Yeah.
what do I have to do today? Oh no, I've got that to do, that to do. You're never actually really there, are you, having the shower because your mind's elsewhere.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I fully agree with, shocking the body in that sense does actually bring you back to now.
Beautiful. So I'm really excited to try it with you. And I also really loved how you talked about the breath because it's so true what you say. A lot of us do breathe really, really superficially. We're stressed, right? And it's such a shame because yeah, it can really change your whole state. Like you said, when you learn to belly breathe, it was like, wow, profound, right?
Really, and you could just feel the oxygen just flow through your body, and it does. I just feel like it really affects your circulation as well, because
Absolutely.
that's something else that I struggled with was poor circulation because all my extremities were always cold,
Mm.
and I knew it's because I wasn't breathing properly. They weren't getting the oxygen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so fantastic. And just want to mention one thing you asked before about being a woman, you know? I think also, I don't know about you, but many women are taught suck in your stomach. You know, you have to
Oh,
look sexy, hold your stomach in.
yes.
And how on earth can one belly breathe when you're holding your stomach in?
Okay. Oh
It's not
my goodness.
possible.
It is impossible. And you're right. And I think majority of my life I did that because I was never happy with my weight.
Yeah.
And so I thought by sucking my stomach in, it'll make me look slimmer. But
Right.
then that's probably why I was breathing through my chest.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's like this with a lot of women. They like notice, oh, if I actually just let my stomach go, I can actually take more air in.
Yeah.
So I'm always telling people in my workshop, like, let your belly go, baby. Just let it go, you know? Yeah.
And it's not a lot of it is not even fat. It's just probably bloatedness from all like water retention because you're not
Yeah.
breathing properly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, wow. No, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel, for your time, your wisdom, inspiration, knowledge, and for answering my difficult questions. It's been amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and also doing the work that you're doing. I know you have a busy life with your kids and still
Oh,
showing up and creating these spaces. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you.
it's soul filling, isn't
Mm,
it?
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh,
And I'm really, really happy to meet you in person and explore these amazing methods together.
me too. Look forward to it. So, my beautiful listeners, we hope you enjoyed this show. And please do get in contact with Rachel. She's available on Instagram and you have your own website. And what are the platforms?
Basically, my website and Instagram. And of course, then you can find my number on WhatsApp and you can even just write me directly.
Perfect. Yes, get
Yes.
in touch. I'm sure she would love to hear from you. Join her breathwork sessions and sign up to her retreats in the future. And again, if you have any questions about anything, reach out to myself or Rachel. We would love to hear from you. But that's all we've got time for today, my friends. We hope you enjoyed the show, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Stay blessed, my beautiful friends.